Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sid. I appreciate it. It's so good to be back here at MAF. I've been, it's maybe my second or third meeting, and I don't get out here near as often as I'd like to, but so value what everybody here is doing, and just it's great to have all the connections, and I respect you guys' work a lot. I think that what's happened at the Riverbend Film Festival, and I've heard a lot of great things about that, and I see some of the other projects and stuff that's coming out of here, and been able to work with a few of the actors in the room as well. And so it's just a real honor just to be here in your space. And I could have used Tim down in Texas. We did a lot of green screen work on our last film, so I was thinking about all your skill set there on that. My name is Lucas Miles. I am the owner of Miles Media. We are a full-service production company based in Granger, Indiana, of all places. So I am an Indiana filmmaker. I'm a producer, director. I dabble in a little bit of acting. It's certainly down the rung of what I do, but it's always nice to have a little cameo in one of your own projects every now and then. So as Sid mentioned, I also host my own podcast show. It's called The Lucas Miles Show. It's on a platform called FaithWire. FaithWire is a kind of a faith positive news platform. They have 3 shows on there. It's me, one of the Duck Dynasty family, and then a former Miss America. So I'm in interesting company there, and I'm definitely the ugliest one of the 3 of them. So it's one of the wives of the Duck Dynasty bunch. So otherwise that wouldn't be the case. But it's been a really incredible experience. And I know a podcast isn't film, but it's given me the opportunity to rub shoulders with a lot of people in the industry. And so we've recorded now over 100 episodes over the last 2 years. We do almost a weekly release. We took a little bit of time off at the start of this year, and I've had names on there like Christy Swanson, who was in our film Crowning Jewels, Stephen Baldwin, let's see here, Devon Franklin, who is, I think, one of the best filmmakers, up-and-coming filmmakers in Hollywood right now. He made the animated film The Star that came out this past Christmas, I believe it was. He also did the new movie Breakthrough that just came out in theaters here in the last month or two. And Devon got to start with Will Smith and kind of broke out on his own and opened up Franklin Entertainment. Kathy Lee Gifford's been on the show. I mean, just all sorts of talented people. Kevin Sorbo, all sorts of names that you would know. And that's given me just a even richer, I think, experience as a filmmaker, as a producer, as a director, to be able to hear people's stories of how they got to where they're at. And, I have people ask me all the time, how do I do this? Even tonight I had 2 people ask me about how do I get a screenplay to the next level? And the reality is nobody's story is the same. And there's a different path for everybody. And, I could tell you what I did, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. And, I just a little bit, maybe short bio on me, and then I'll talk to you about some of what I'm working on right now, and certainly want to give time for questions, is I started, I went to Penn High School, which has, historically just had a really wonderful theater program, and went through that. I ended up becoming president of the Thespian Society. I didn't realize it. I didn't even know it was a thing, but I was a producer back then, and I didn't know it. And so I started this thing we called they jokingly named it the Luke Annual Coffee House, which the name stuck for 10 years at Penn High School. But it was basically, they called it Luke Annual because we did it whenever I felt like it or whenever I was up for it. And it was basically a variety show. And we'd bring, people would do skits and recording, singer-songwriter types would play and all sorts of things. And I would audition the talent. I'd put together the whole event. And I got to the point where my senior year, Penn High School actually got me a school credit card with a balance on it. I was the only kid in the school with a school credit card that I would be able to purchase stuff for the coffee house. And we did it maybe 3 times my senior year, and this thing was generating revenue for the school. I mean, we made thousands of dollars back for the school, and I didn't realize at the time that I was a producer, but I was a producer. And so it took me years to figure out how to actually monetize that skill set, how to allow that maybe that gifting to come out in me. At about 17, 18 years old, I went into the ministry. Graduated. I went to 2 years at Purdue, 2 years here at IUSB. Graduated from IUSB with a focus on religious studies, and I've been in the church world for over 20 years now. I'll be 40 this year, so I started pretty young, and that's kind of not always the place you expect a producer or a Hollywood guy to come out of. But for me, the experiences really come together. And people ask me all the time, so okay, so do you only make faith movies? And the answer is no. You know, we actually, the first 2 movies I made were just kind of positive family content. First one was a horse and a girl movie called Rodeo Girl with Kevin Sorbo. We did a 3-year deal with Netflix on that. It just went off this year off of Netflix, so I'm sure that's going to end up someplace else. It was in Redbox, it was in Walmart, all those kind of things. We made that film for, I always say $150,000. I probably should keep that answer since I'm on camera tonight, but we actually made it for about $135,000. And Kevin Sorbo was in the film, which was a healthy part of the budget. We shot it almost in one location on a horse ranch up in Grand Rapids. Beautiful 180-acre property, had all sorts of different things we could do there. And the movie's done quite well. It stars Kevin, and then Sophie Boland was the girl who played Rodeo Girl, really talented Grand Rapids actress. And our second film that we did, Crowning Jewels, was shot completely in the Michiana area, except for one scene that we shot in LA. And that was an interesting story that we got done with the film, and it wasn't long enough for our distributor, and they needed about 7 more minutes of runtime. And we stretched those credits as long as we possibly could. And we came up with the idea, because it's about 2 twin sisters, and they're graduating high school, getting ready to go on to college. And so if you've seen, how many people have seen Crowning Jewels? Anybody? Anybody? We got a couple? Okay. Some guys that aren't going to admit it. We added in a sequence kind of with a, you know, what I would call the Princess Bride technique of the 2 twin sisters. You don't know who it is at first. You just see one side of it, but they're on a Skype call reliving this whole experience as they now are in 2 separate colleges in different parts of the country, these twin sisters. And so that allowed us to get our runtime. So we shot all of that in LA because that's where the twins live. We went out there and we filmed that. And we were able to kind of meet our length, and we did a deal on that film. So it distributed, it's a Sony output deal, and, you know, hit stores, Walmart and all those sort of platforms. And we've done Fox Asia and a bunch of other things with that film. So happy to talk about that. You know, if there's questions on those things, we did a lot of things right, a lot of things wrong, and we're getting smarter every single time we do this. From there, I've consulted on a lot of projects. And so people say, what does Miles Media do? Miles Media does anything that is in the entertainment industry that we can still sleep at night after we do it. And so we've consulted on scripts. We do a lot of development where people bring us a project and they'll kind of hire us on for a couple months in order to kind of help package things together and get that to the next level. We have an immigration story we're working on right now for a gentleman down in Mississippi that's a real-life tale, and so we're you know, bringing this all together. I've got a script writing team, so I actually have a script that we came up with. It's a Christmas story that's at Lifetime right now, and so we you know, say a prayer, fingers crossed, knock on wood or something for that one. Whatever positive things you do, we've made it. My agent submitted 10 scripts to Lifetime. 9 have gotten rejected, and ours is the 10th one that's still hanging on, and we've made it through 2 rounds of their approval process. We're in the 3rd round now, waiting to hear, you know, what's going to happen with that. So, you know, we do a little bit of everything. We also do a lot of commercial work. So, you know, when you have a camera and you have a crew and you don't have a feature or funding for a feature, you're waiting for funding for a feature, you know, we take on commercial work. Our specialty, we'll do commercials of all kinds, but our specialty is really kind of what I would call high-end manufacturing. So we're the guys that, you know, a big plant would come in and say, we need 30 videos. And, you know, we're used to kind of cranking out edits on that sort of length. And so I have an in-house editing team and everything that we bring in, and we'll roll up with a van and 7 guys and you know, do a full what I like to call a real Hollywood setup, you know, with how we shoot with monitors so the clients can sit down and see, you know, on a big screen everything that we're shooting. And I think I applaud anybody that picks up a camera and makes a video. I'm now impressed with them because I know how hard it is. And, you know, before I got into this business, you see a movie and you're like, oh, that was terrible. And now I'm just like, they finished it. Like, that's awesome, you know, because it's so hard just to get stuff done, and you guys know that. How many people in here would say, I'm a filmmaker, okay? All right, how many people would say, I'm, you know, an actor or an actress? Okay, and you might be both of those. How many people say, I'm a producer? Okay, got a few. All right, so that kind of gives me, how many are crew, you know, like, hey, I live for the behind the scenes, don't put me in a camera, don't make me raise money, but I'm going to get this done, okay? All right, so, you know, I mean, look, it takes everybody to come together and finish a project like this, and I'm just impressed anytime somebody finishes something. You know, our niche in the commercial side is, you know, we've done stuff outside of that. Best One Tire, we do all their national work, but, you know, we've really gotten to the manufacturing space, and it's been a good space for our team, and you know, we're able to kind of keep those guys moving, but we really live for the features. I mean, that's what our heart is. We're just finishing a feature called The Penitent Thief. We've got a couple laurels on the trailer so far, which has been nice, and that's another Kevin Sorbo film, which we originally didn't cast. We weren't looking at Kevin originally. We looked at a couple of different actors, and just schedules and money and everything else just wasn't working, and we were cutting closer and closer to shooting date, and I called Kevin and I said, hey, how about you jump in this? And he said, I'm in, you know, and so he came in for us, and he plays King Herod in this film. It's a unique story. It's a backstory on the two thieves on the cross and how they might have gotten there. So we're used to seeing the Passion of Christ from Jesus' perspective. This is really a thieving, darker tale of how these two thieves have this tragic ending in life and how they might have gotten there. And it's based on a book called The Tale of the Penitent Thief by Don Willis, who's our executive producer. So it's really his film. He was an investor on Rodeo Girl, and a small investor on Rodeo Girl. I think he put $400 in our Kickstarter, and part of that got him a chance to come sit on set and be a background performer in a scene with Kevin Sorbo. And he was there, and he brought a bunch of his books, and he handed me a book, and he said, hey, give this a read, and you know what, truth be told, and I've told him this, it sat in my garage. It didn't even make it into my house for over a year. It was on a shelf in my garage, and I would see it, and I'd go, okay, you know, because he gave me 2 or 3 of them, and they were just sitting there. It probably means I need to clean my garage more often, but it sat on a shelf in my garage, and so, you know, people say, oh, how do I, you know, I'm a writer, how do I do this? Well, he just waited. He stayed in touch, you know what? And then I announced I was making Crowning Jewels, and Don called me and said, "Hey, I got some people that might want to invest in this. They saw Rodeo Girl. They knew I was part of this. Would you be willing to fly down to Arkansas and meet with a couple investors?" You know what that made me think? I probably should read his book before I do that. And then I read his book. I finished it in one day. And flew, not because it was short, it was just really good. And I flew down to Arkansas and met with his investors, and we started talking. I said, hey, I finished your book, and what'd you think? And we went back and forth. I said, we should make this thing after our next one. And so we finished Crowning Jewels, and we went into that. And so we've been working on that in the last couple of years. And it's been a tough project. We're trying to do a period piece. I know some of you guys have dealt with, you know, different, you've done a lot of costuming and those things, and that's expensive, and it's hard. And, you know, we're trying to make Texas and Arkansas look like Israel and Middle East and everything else, and it's challenging. We had some great locations. We shot at a place called the Great Passion Play in Arkansas. It's the longest running outdoor passion reenactment in North America. They've been going for 50 plus years, so they have 60,000 people go through a year, and they have a whole biblical village, kind of, you know, Israel set that we were able to use. Turned out really well. And then we also shot at a place called Capernaum Village in Weatherford, Texas, dodging copperhead snakes the whole time while we were there. You know, you tell an actor, okay, now you're going to walk through that field, and they're like, no, I'm not. If I do it first, will you? No. Okay, we're changing the script. You know, so we shot down there. Interesting little fun fact about Capernaum Village. Has anybody heard of? It's a VidAngel project, which VidAngel is a streaming platform, and there's a project called The Chosen. Has anybody heard of that? Okay, you got 1 or 2. So look up The Chosen when you have a chance. The Chosen is now the highest grossing crowdfunded film of all time. It just beat out Mystery Science Theater 3000 or whatever it was. I believe they've raised something like $12 million for this movie through crowdfunded investments. VidAngel worked with the FCC on basically using a Kickstarter type model, but turning it into individual investors. So they had people, I think the minimum investment was something like $20, and they raised over $12 million with 16,000 investors on this project. It's one of the most cutting edge things out there Yeah.
Is that based on Hein Kotak's book, The Chosen?
No, it's not. It's actually it's in the faith genre, but it is it's the first series. And when I say Netflix style, I've seen 2 of the episodes. It feels like House of Cards or something, but it's about Jesus' life.
Oh, okay.
And so it is really, really remarkable. They've spent their money very well. And so that's, it's now a world record holder at that point. So, but they filmed at Capernaum Village, the same place. I wish we would have filmed after them because they put a bunch of money into the location and it looked way better on their set than it did on ours. Although it still was wonderful for ours, but they just really took it up a notch. So you live and you learn. But, we have a cartel movie I'm dabbling with looking at doing here. We're working on a script for it. It's based on a true story. Kind of a redemption story with a guy that I'm actually friends with that had a pretty crazy run-in kidnapping encounter with the cartel. So we're dabbling with that a little bit. We've got a couple other of our own projects in the works, but we do a lot of also actor and artist development. So people will come to us that are what I would call talent, and they'll say, hey, how do I go from the Midwest to LA or to New York or to Atlanta or whatnot? And so historically, I've done a lot of coaching. We've worked with people that have been on American Idol, people that have been on The Voice, on America's Got Talent, and really help them get to that level. I fought this for a while, but after kind of so many times people have asked me about it, and then also needing talent for our own projects, this year we have just launched what we are calling the Indiana Talent Agency, ITA for short. As far as we know, we would like to think we're the only talent agency around in the Midwest here, or at least in the immediate vicinity that has strong Hollywood ties. And we are really sort of what I would call a mother agency or a development agency for talent. We're trying not to have 150 people on our roster, but we're really trying to have boutique talent that we feel like are unique, that we can take to the next level and help develop. So we've signed only about 15 or 20 people initially here. We got 2 in the room at least, I think. So we got Joshua over here and then Jenny over here as well that are both working with us, and a few others. Michaela Eppers, who was Miss Indiana and then went on to become Mrs. America after she got married, because she couldn't be Miss America after you get married. So she won Mrs. America and competed at Mrs. World. So she's with us as well. And so we got a small office up on Bittersweet in Granger. And that's kind of our world headquarters, for lack of a better term. Those are at least a few things that I'm dabbling in. And I really, I want to talk to where stuff is really most specific. And so I probably work best on questions rather than just trying to come up with something witty for everybody to say. I want to make sure it's helpful, for people. And so, I've done a lot in distribution, we've done a lot in casting, we've done a lot in development, we've done a lot in fundraising. And so if there's questions in that space or something outside of that, I would love to, really be able to focus on maybe what people's interests are and what you're working on, so I can really help bring value to you tonight. So with that, I would love to open it up and see what's going on in the room. And people are thinking, yes, tell me.
I'm Kevin McNamara.
Yeah, we've met before, right?
Yeah. I was just curious, what's the most difficult experience you've ever had in all of your, the biggest obstacle that you would have to overcome, like either while working on a movie, what would you say that is?
So I would say it's definitely different categories, okay? I mean, that we've certainly all had crazy production schedules that just physically exhaust you. But those, you still get a high from it at the end of the day when you're done. I've worked with some really challenging actors. I had an actor on one of my projects who was one of the more difficult humans I've encountered. Love them, but they were really, really challenging to work with. I mean, because I'm on film, I won't even go into all the stories on that, but it was hard. And that was, as a filmmaker, I felt like it disrupted everybody on the set to the point where, it was just days where nobody wanted to be around this person or be in the scene with this person. But we had already shot so much that the budget didn't, if it was Hollywood, they'd fire them and they'd bring somebody else in and they'd do reshoots and they'd make it work. We just didn't have that liberty. This is a $400,000 film and we couldn't make it an $800,000 film. And so that was challenging. But I would say the most challenging thing that I've ever had to do as a producer, and this is being very honest, is being accountable for other people's money. And when you have the weight of investors that come in on a project, and and I always tell people when we raise money, I always tell them I never want to get an investor that comes in at a level that we can't relationally withstand if the film lost everything. And I always tell them, think about if this movie project lost all your money, and you saw me on the street, and what amount of money would you invest that would make you want to punch me in the face? And now let's go $10 less than that. And because there's a weight on that, and that's something that I've had long days creatively as a filmmaker, but the weight of producing, I think, is one of the most challenging things I've ever done, because you're dealing with other people's livelihood, and if you do it right, you're getting people investing an appropriate amount of money at what they can withstand, and I always tell people, if you're investing in film, it should be play money. It should be like, this is I'm going to either go to Vegas, or I'm going to invest in a movie, sort of money that you have, and never the life savings, sort of situation. But there's still a weightiness to that. So, good question.
Lucas, for an actor here locally to feel it worthy to either make a move to LA or even Chicago. I mean, there's a lot of them in Chicago. At what point do you think it's worth it for them to consider that?
Absolutely. No, and I get that question a lot. The answer is it depends, okay? And I think that my advice that I give to a lot of people is I would rather be a big fish in a small pond than a small fish in a big pond, okay? If you are a 21-year-old good-looking blonde and you go to LA, well, first of all, if you're a 21-year-old good-looking blonde, and this will be stereotypical, and I'm not trying to be sexist or anything here, but that person is harder to come by if they're an actor or an actress in a smaller market. If they go to LA, every girl that won prom queen just moved to LA to try to make it there. And so the competition is next level. And so, but it doesn't mean there's a time for taking a risk, and everybody's situation's different. But I don't like to see people go, I'm throwing it all in, I'm going to LA, and I'm going to live out of my car, and I'm going to try to make it. I think that although we have stories where people have done that, and maybe it's right for some people, I think more often than not, that story doesn't end well. And so I like seeing people be a lot more strategic. One of the first people that my wife and I met when we went to Hollywood, we were at an event, and I was going up the stairs, and they were coming down the stairs, and I met Katy Perry's parents. And we knew it was them, and we started talking, and it was kind of this networking, mingling event thing that we gotten invited to, and we just hit it off. And Keith, her dad, called me the next day, and we ended up meeting up with them a week later, and they've been out here a few times with us, and my wife's been all over the world with them, and been to all sorts of events. But as we've got to know them more, one of the things that I've learned is that Katy, before she was Katy Perry, she moved to Nashville, and she spent 5 years developing her team, and that's what nobody sees. And as an artist, and again, it's not film, but it's she's an entertainer. Is she spent 5 years developing her team and her craft, getting ready to go to the next level before she ever did that. And I think if she would have just thrown it all away and go, I'm moving to LA to try to do it, I don't think anybody would have ever heard of her. But because she developed the team and she got all the right pieces around her, she was able to go to the next level. And a lot of times actors, they go, I don't need a team, it's just me, this is what I do, And I would say, yeah, you do. There's definitely some components in that team that you need, and I think it's worth developing those, taking a little bit more time, but strategic about it in order to go to that next level. Is there another question? Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit between the differences between that level, between funding from getting donations and crowdfunding and securities?
Yes. And So I'll preface that with, I'm not an accountant and I'm not an attorney, okay? Especially since I'm on film tonight, so I'll make that very clear. It's always a challenge, and I think a lot of people go, well, I could never raise any money. or I don't know anybody who has money, and that might be true. But I think that if you don't believe in your project enough that you would be willing to invest in it, nobody else will. And so any project that I do, and when I first did my first thing, I put $1,000 of my own money in it, because I believed in it enough. I didn't have the money that some of my other investors did at the time, but I at least wanted to put in enough for me that I could say, look, I was the first person to invest in this project, and I'm invested in here initially. And then as we've gone more and more projects, that number becomes a lot higher. Crowning Jewels, I'm a major investor in Crowning Jewels, for us doing that. And I think that, first of all, that gives you street credit. When I sit down with an investor and I say, look, this is play money, but I know that at the level you're at, you have a portfolio. And the reality is everybody has play money. It's just a different zero at the end of it, or a different series of zeros at the end of it on what that amount is. There's people that have play money where it's $1. There's people that have play money where, it's $10. There's people that have play money it's $100, and certainly we could go on up from there, and there's other play money that's there. And I think finding a way to involve people, one of the things that was successful about Crowning Jewels, and this was challenging as a producer, but made it very accessible as for our investors, is Crowning Jewels had 37 locations in the Michiana area. So we went around and we said, look, how would you like your place to be in a movie? And some people donated the location, other people donated the location and then invested cash in it beyond there. We also had the premiere. We did I think a really great job with sponsorships at the premiere. We had over 800 people at the Lerner Theater, for our premiere of Crowning Jewels. And we did it up. It went really well. And so I think that in being willing to invest in your own, having that street credit there, whatever level that makes sense to you, being able to show the value in the community, in the involvement, and I think that starts with a good prospectus. Being able to go to somebody and sit down with a prospectus, and I always look for what I would call, for lack of a better term, low-hanging fruit first. I want to go to the guys that are just big Lucas fans and say, look, you know what, would you be willing to put $2,500 in, to get us started? And then once I get 4 of those guys and I got $10,000 in the account, I can go to the next guy and say, hey, I already got $10,000, would you be willing to match that? And then we start climbing, from there. But I will say, this is where your team comes in. Most people are not ready for the accounting that this requires. Most people are not ready for the legal work that this requires. And that has been something that is, I think, very underestimated in this business. And it requires, some work and effort ahead of time to get there. So if I was making a film for $5,000, I would probably ask for donations. If I was making a film for $50,000, I would be, and maybe even if it was a $25,000 documentary, I might still look for investors at that level, and certainly anything above there. Yeah.
Brian Stevens, as a writer, how do you go about with dialogue?
Yeah.
Getting away from writing a cliche. Your standard stuff that he wouldn't say this.
Right.
It's just kind of verbalizing.
I'm a
stereotypical.
Yeah, no, I understand where you're going. I always say that I'm a producer first and a director second. I directed half of The Penitent Thief, which that was interesting. We actually started with another director. He got fired in the middle of the process, and then the executive producer asked me if I would come in and finish it. So I had to kind of back clean up a little bit on that project, which was not always ideal, but we did it. And then I was a co-director on Crowning Jewels from the start. Intentionally, we had 2 of us that were doing it. My camera technical skill set has exponentially increased over the last, we'll say, 2 or 3 years since making Crowning Jewels, where now I can be on a commercial crew, and yell at my guys in technical camera language and talk to them about those things, which I couldn't have done, prior to that. I'm still not the guy. I can run a GH5 and I can get some B-roll if I need it, but I'm not the guy that's going to run out there with the red and set it up. And, I know some of you guys in here, and I'm probably most familiar with Tim's work, but, Tim's capable of being like, he can shoot and direct and do those things. I'm not the guy that you're going to say, come shoot my movie. I'm the guy that's going to bring together the team that's going to shoot the movie. And I'm very comfortable in front of a monitor, whispering to a DP, making sure that he's getting what's in my head. So with that, what I say is I'm very collaborative. And I'm not the artistic guy that I've never had the approach of like, I gotta find the perfect words, this script. And but I have two other writers on it. It's a girl named Violet Connor out of Arizona, and then actually Edgar Struble, who's a partner of mine for a lot of projects. He's the director of music for American Music Awards and a whole bunch of other projects. And so we just collaborated. Anybody use Marco Polo? It's an app. So there's an app called Marco Polo. It's a free app, and you can you can pull it up on your phone, and it is basically so here's a buddy of mine, Otto. And so we're going to send him a message. So I'm just here. Hey, Otto, I'm at a Mid-American Filmmakers meeting. I'm speaking and I'm teaching them about Marco Polo. See you later. And then, so it's kind of like a recorded walkie-talkie, video walkie-talkie. So I send that to them. That's how we wrote our entire last script. And so Violet lives in Arizona. And I would just say, okay, here's what I'm seeing the character doing. And I'm walking my dog around the block talking to her about this character. And she goes, what if he said this? And then, the next, a couple hours later, I pick up my phone and I got a new message from her and she's got some other thing. And you can put groups on there. So you could put 5 people into one thread and dialogue on a scene. And what I love about it is you can watch it and fast forward, because if you're like me and you're always in a hurry, it allows you to kind of get stuff faster than if I was actually talking to them. And so I've used tools like that to really collaborate to get that language right. And I'm not going to, you rewatch something like Friends or Seinfeld, there's masters out there that really have that witty banter and dialogue. I don't know if that's me yet, but my best skill sets have my best products I'm most proud of have usually come out of collaboration. Yeah.
My name is Idris.
Yes.
I'm sorry, singer-songwriter. Like in a place like our area,
Yeah.
right now, where we don't have like professional investors, what do you say to them about what's in it for them when they put their money into the movie?
For sure. First of all, I'm going to challenge you. We do have professional investors here. If you drive through Eddy Street Commons and you see all the construction that's happening there, there's a lot of investors over there. Okay, everywhere, every building that's been built around here is from a professional investor has put some money into that project to make that happen. Well, a professional investor doesn't care what he invests in. A professional investor is looking for good investment. And all film is it's a property. In fact, if you go to Hollywood, that's what they call it. I have this property. And so I want to challenge your thinking to go beyond that, to see that, I have, if it's a viable deal, it's a viable deal. And so if we look at these things as, well, they're probably not going to do it because it's film, they probably won't do it because we're not going in there with that level of confidence. But if we can see this as, this is a property that has value. Now, here's the thing. I meet a lot of filmmakers that really overinflate the value of their project. We need to sell people on worst case scenarios, all those sorts of things, and if they'll still come in at the worst case scenario, then they're a right fit for you. I always say that we want partners. Actually, I stole this from a friend of mine, Edgar Struble. And now we say it is we want partners, not problems. Okay, and so, but the reality is there's investors here. I mean, I've found investors. Crowning Jewels, a lot of our investors, not all of them, but a lot of our investors were from the Michiana area, and so they're out there. And these guys, some of them invested in film before, most of them hadn't. And so they might be your dentist, they might be your doctor, they might be your next door neighbor, but there's guys out there that say, hey, you know what, I'll try this. If I come out on set and hang out and get a VIP pass, the red carpet, I'll put $5,000 in this.
Average percentage on
Yeah.
return on investment. What is an average thing you say? You get 20% on your principal, you get,
Yes, good question. Who's raised money for a film before? I won't even. Okay, all right, cool. Here's the thing. And I'm not a lawyer, an attorney, or an accountant, but you're not allowed to say this is how much you're going to give back. Okay, because the moment you do that, that's how much you have to give them back. And we can't. None of us are fortune tellers. None of us can see the future. And so what we're focused on is industry trends. So in the same way, if I'm writing a book, the publisher wants to know what's 3 other titles that's like your book and how many copies of those books sold. Because that's going to give us maybe some sort of idea of what this book could do. In the same way, what's another type of film like this? And I want to look for highs and lows. The movie Pureflix got on the map, if you're familiar with them, by making the movie God's Not Dead. God's Not Dead was shot for $2 million. It did, I think, now over $100 million in sales. For a $2 million investment, $100 million, from a Hollywood standpoint, that's like mind-blowing. They don't even know how people did it, Okay, I Can Only Imagine with Dennis Quaid this last year came out, was shot for I think I want to say they had 11 million all in, and it did over 80 million just in the box office alone. Now, if I go to an investor and I go, well, this is kind of like I Can Only Imagine or God's Not Dead, and we think we're going to do this, and they're like, well, have you done this before? No, but I really think that this is going to be the next thing. That's not good. That's not good producering. I'm sure that's not a word, but that's not a good. You know, we're being either naive or we're being deceitful. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in. I'm going to say, look, there are examples of films like these two that have just killed it and exploded. But I'm not going to pretend like that's an easy thing to do. Those are the unicorns of the film world. And you know, Blair Witch Project was a film like that, shot for what, $35,000 or something. If anybody remembers, anybody saw Blair Witch Project? I know a couple of you did. Okay. And you know, and then it made like some crazy amount. I don't remember how much. I just remember how scared I was when I left the theater. But you know, it did crazy. And so you know, we want to show some of those as like, hey, this could be a world where there is these possibilities. But more consistently, we see this. What I'll say in good faith a lot of times with people is that, and I had a guy that has invested in a lot of films, and he tends to try to average about 12%. And his attitude is, you know what, if I can invest in a film and make the same amount of money that I would invest in a mutual fund and be able to get that back, then great. He said somewhere he's done really well, somewhere he's done poorly, but I can never promise that to an investor. I have to be able to tell them, look, we might lose everything. You know, and with the DVD market changing the way that it has, there's a good chance that you might. And so the DVD market used to be a major portion of sales. Now everything's streaming. Nobody knows what to do in Hollywood anymore. I think it's going to take another 2 years for it to recalibrate before they start figuring out how to make money again. Isn't that great news? I want to give you the truth. And yeah, next.
Remember, when I talked to you, I was so impressed that you sat down and did an interview. With a famous movie star. I said, oh my God, he's interviewing Jesus Christ.
Jim Caviezel, yes.
Oh
yes.
my God, I almost fainted.
Jim was wonderful. Jim, you know, a lot of people would know him through Mel Gibson's film, which there's a sequel in the works to that. They may have already started filming. I'm not 100%. It's been very hush-hush. I've met Jim a couple times. I actually first met him here in town when he was attending the University of Notre Dame briefly, and then I had a chance to interview him. I was with him for a couple hours last year, and we filmed that and then released that on the podcast show. And Jim's just awesome. It was really funny. Like when we were on camera, he was very just somber and, you know, very deliberate. And then we get off camera and he just start joking. I'm like, hey, can we talk? He's like, look, when I go to the airport, people see me as Jesus. And he's like, I have to be careful of my persona.
What about,
he's like, there's a lot of pressure being Jesus, you know?
the person of interest?
Yeah, the person of interest.
What about that? Did that come out later?
No, that didn't come out as much. No, he's a wonderful guy and just really sincere, loving guy, and yeah, it's just awesome to be able to be in a guy like that's presence. Yeah.
I was impressed.
Thank you.
It takes a lot.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's available on YouTube. If you Google Jim Caviezel, Lucas Miles Show, you should be able to find that as well. Yeah.
Are you open to reading news stories?
That's a good question. Okay. As a general answer to that, okay, if somebody just called our office and said, "Do you guys read screenplays?" What I would typically tell them is we charge $200 to read. Okay. Now I'll give you the behind the scenes on that. That is usually to run off anybody that doesn't actually think their screenplay is good enough that I'm going to read it and like it. Because if they're not willing to pay $200, they probably don't actually believe in what they wrote well enough to do it. I've never actually charged anybody $200 to read their screenplay. I've read a lot of screenplays. I've had a few people tell me yes, that they would pay $200 and then we'll read it and not charge them because we just want to see, are they willing to do that? Don't let that secret out. So I'm sure it's probably already out there now that's on camera. But you know, I just ruined the whole business model. But I will say this. What I prefer to do is I prefer to start with, okay, give me a log line and a short synopsis. Let me start there. I had a guy pitch me something here recently where every one of the stories was like, you know, ghost transvestite, comes back from the 4th century, and it was just like this just is not anywhere near what is going to be something that I'm going to look at. And but so I like to start there just so I don't waste either person's time in that process. I do enjoy reading stuff. I try to save them up and jump on a flight and crank them out with a hard copy. So we're not totally opposed to it, but we do want to make sure that it's really ready before we get it. We like to see kind of some shorter versions, or hey, we'll commit to the first 10 pages or something from there. We just had a guy, I won't tell you his name, but it was a pretty significant producer, read a project that I'm attached to. I didn't write it, but I'm attached to the project as a producer, and they did extensive work on feedback and everything else for us, and it was so helpful. They didn't charge a dime for it, and so we just thought the world of that. And so if we can, I'm not that guy, but if I can help somebody the way that guy helped me, then as long as we can make time for it, we're happy to. But it's we want people to be aware that it's going to have to be fit in where there's a window of time to do that. So
yeah, Kevin McInerney. Religious parody is my favorite of all time. My probably 2 favorite movies of all time are The Life Bride and God Spoke.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about doing a religious parody?
There's I've become pretty good friends with Stephen Baldwin over the last couple of years. I actually just went to Ukraine with him. We were talking about Portugal's. Okay, back there. We were talking about Portugal's tax credit. We met with the Ukrainian Film Office, me, Stephen, and then his manager, John, and we sat down with them talking about possibility of bringing a project to Ukraine. And Stephen and John, his manager, just finished producing a film called Church People, which is hysterical. And it's not out yet. I think it'll be out probably this fall. I'm guessing it's finished, and they're just finishing up distribution stuff. But it's kind of in that. It's really kind of from a faith standpoint, but making fun of themselves a little bit, and it's really good. It's about a pastor that decides to do a live crucifixion at the church for Easter in order to gain higher attendance. And as you can imagine how that goes. So I first heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible. And it was brilliant. And so I love that space. I think there's some really great stuff in there. And I'm a faith guy, but I don't exclusively make faith, but I'm able to laugh at some of the stuff in the faith world. And I think that, I think good humor is that, is good humor. So, yeah. What else? Yeah.
What's your sense on how hot kids' movies are?
When I was at, anybody go to AFM this year? American Film Market in Santa Monica. If you're looking to go, I want to invest in a trip to LA. And tell me your name one more time. Debbie. I was telling Debbie that, one of the ways that I kind of built where I'm at is I went to LA almost every month for about 5 years. And just, bought the $200-300 ticket, flew out their coach, and just slowly collected relationships and met people and went to this meeting and connected me to this guy, and this meeting connected me to this guy. Did this started off on studio tours as a tourist, and later got to go on studio tours with people that worked at the studio or that were executives at the studio and those things. And at AFM, everybody kept asking me, like, do you have a dolphin movie? I'm like, no, I don't have a dolphin movie, like, where am I going to find a dolphin? Like, I lived in South Bend, Indiana, But I thought, the zoo, I bet they have a dolphin,
Asian carp.
Yeah, Asian carp, yeah. And it's interesting, there's always, like, this hot thing, horse movies seem to never fail. I just, like, as much as I would love to never work with a horse again after making a horse movie.
Dog movies seem to be making a comeback.
What is it?
I said dog movies seem to be
Dog movies, yeah. I mean, animal movies just always do well. Crowning Jewels was interesting for us, and honestly, so the girls in Crowning Jewels, they were when we started with them, they were 17. They turned 18, I think, right before we filmed or as we were filming or something. And they're real life twins, Jack and Elizabeth Labadie. They're wonderful. They were in LA doing a bunch of stuff for a while. They're finishing up college right now before they kind of jump back in. But it's interesting. Like the feedback we got, especially with some of the foreign markets, for them was that they were in this in-between age. People either wanted them a little bit younger and cutesier, or a little bit older and sexier. That was like, that's verbatim what distributors have told us. And I'm just kind of going like, it's a kid's movie, you know, like, and they were just in this in-between age where, you know, it's kind of got this Home Alone meets Ferris Bueller's Day Off sort of feel to the movie, and you know, but that part of it didn't fully connect. And I mean, I'm still glad that we made the movie and glad that we worked with them. But if I could have caught them probably 3 years sooner, I think it would have done even better, you know, and had more of that Parent Trappy sort of feel, you know, to that. Yeah, no, they probably wouldn't be able to do the band scene. That was fun. And Elkhart was wonderful to work with. I will say that they shut down John Weaver Highway for us for free. And we had 10 police cars out there blocking everything, and we did all sorts of stunts. So it was fun. Was there another question over here?
If a person's got an idea for a script, and he's looking for collaborators to pitch the idea on the supposedly, and he's kind of flushed out the majority of the movie, but he just hasn't written it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you collaborate and push on?
It depends on the project.
Concept. You have a concept and you want to flush it out.
I would say, you know, at first I would just want to hear it. Okay, I'd want to hear what's this about, where it's at, everything else. We would go one or two ways. If I was over the moon with it and just loved it, there's situations where I've done a collaboration, and I'm not opposed to looking at that. If it's something where I'm going like, hey, I think this is cool, and I wouldn't mind having, you know, a part in it in some way, but I don't know if I can devote the time because it's not necessarily hitting on my full passion level, then we've negotiated other deals with people, you know, either for, you know, for points on something or for, you know, sometimes an hourly rate of just kind of a consulting, you know, project for it as well. So, I mean, it's kind of choose your own adventure at Miles Media. It just depends on what you need, and we kind of make a deal and we figure out what works, you know, what everybody's looking for. So, yeah, it's good.
I think I know the answer to it, but just in case I don't. So when you produce the films, it seems like you're typically going for a direct to streaming or Blu-ray or DVD.
Yeah.
It's not a theatrical, and it's not going a film festival route.
Sure.
You've already got these relationships, right? And do you?
Yes. So I'm changing on that a little bit, and you know, I mean, I've never submitted anything to Riverbend, which I probably should, but we've changed a little bit on The Penitent Thief, where the executive producer, who's a big film festival buff, he's started submitting the trailer a bunch of places and has plans to submit the film there. So The Penitent Thief will go out to festivals for that. You know, I have a decent amount of distributor relationships. And, you know, when you go to something like the American Film Market, it's on the Lowe's Santa Monica Hotel, and you walk all the floors and you meet all the guys, and there's usually kind of a gatekeeper at the front of the room, and they don't let you in unless they like it. And then if they like it, they go, okay, come on in and show me this or whatever. But, you know, over the years, I've been able to build, you know, a hand. So I know when I'm working on a project, okay, I could take this to this guy, or I could take this to this guy. And some of them are true distributors, and a lot of them, you know, some of the others are sales reps. And so sales reps kind of become the middlemen of, you know, if you don't have, they might say, oh, I have a direct with Sony. Well, really what that means is they're a middleman and they have an output deal with Sony, but you're not really going through Sony. So if I can skip all the work of chasing festivals, I'm happy to. But I think there's something fun of it, and I think that, you know, having the laurels on the back of the box looks really good too for a project. And so I've changed my mind on that a little bit. I think you'll see more of our projects in the future, you know, being a both-and scenario rather than the either-or that we've approached in the past with festivals. But I try to line up distribution as soon as we can. If I did, maybe, you know, I wish I would have made Silver Linings Playbook. You know, that's a movie that I watched, and I'm like, why didn't I think of this? You know, it's brilliant, you know. And, you know, it's just this great, edgy, indie type film with just wonderful acting and, you know, just this crazy, you know, love story in the middle of it. And that's a film that, you know, obviously if you didn't have a studio budget and you made a film like that, I would take that thing to the festivals, and I'd work that as long as I could. You could probably make it for a lot less than what we've made some of our other stuff for. You know, so if you could shoot a film like that for $150,000 and run it to festivals, you're going to get a better deal on the backside of that, after you can show that, look, there's a following with this, you know, it's out there. So I don't thumb my nose at the festivals maybe the way I did earlier on in the process, and I think both and is the best way to go. Yeah, I know we're getting close to time, so cut me off whenever you need to. Yeah, yeah, Ron, yeah. Ron's worked with me before as a crew guy, and I know he's an actor as well.
Yeah, coming from an actor perspective, I just wondered, like, I'm getting more interested the more I hear about filmmaking itself, and I was wondering, for somebody who's never done it, who's never really thought of themselves in that light or whatever, what would you say would be the first step? Would it be short film, doing short films, and how much of a vehicle are short films to making a full-length feature film?
I think that short films are one of these. Their business card. You know, now there's short films that have made money, and there's short films that have won some massive awards. I watched a short film here last year by a director we were looking at that was insane, and they're out there. But I think for a lot of people, a short film is a business card. If I'm an investor and you don't have something that you filmed before, I'm not going to give you any money. You know, I want to see. I mean, show me a music video. Show me a video you made for your mom. Like, show me something. You know, and so if that takes doing a shorter film to start with, or a documentary, or a music video, or a reel for one of your friends, shoot something in order to gain confidence. And the investment is probably going to be based upon the quality of that. And so, you know, I think that the more you can shoot as a filmmaker, the better, and start with what you can afford.
What would be the minimal like time length of a short film that you think would be considered?
I mean, there's 24-hour film festivals, and there's guys that have spent probably 10 years making a short, you know, and so somewhere in between there is the average. I think that, you know, our company just got hired to make 4 shorts for a national distributor here recently, and so they haven't released the name yet. Otherwise, I would tell you. If I come back in a month, I can tell you who it is. But it's for a national distribution platform, and we've done 4 shorts for them. We shot all 4 shorts in 2 days. They're short. They're 3 to 5 minutes apiece, and so we shot all 4 in 2 days, and it's based around a family, and so we used the same you know cast for all of them. We shot it all at my house, and we did it on the super cheap, and you know minimal crew. We made it happen, and those we're editing like 1 a week and cranking them out. You know, so we're just going to finish the 3rd and 4th one. We'll have those both done this week, and so we're submitting all 4 of them.
And this
so.
company is having you do these short films for.
They've hired us for their social media platform, so they're releasing these on Facebook Watch. So and they're paying money to put into them. So there's business out there, there's jobs out there for sure. You're probably ready to come up here, so I think we're about time.
If all the questions
Do
are
one more question. Anybody final question?
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Isn't he a great guy?
Here we go.
The more I appreciate you, and you seem to be a kind of an Indiana guy. You know, a nice person like we are.
I like this place.
I like it too, and I've got something for you.
Oh wow!
It's a certificate of appreciation
Well,
for
thank
being
you very
here
much.
tonight.
I appreciate
And I think it would be in your best interest and ours for you to join our
that. I probably should do that tonight too.